Hey guys, today we're in 1 Chronicles chapter 5. So we're in the section of 4 through 9 that is going through the descendants of the 12 tribes of Israel. 4 was Judah and Simeon. Chapter 5 is Reuben and Gad. Okay, so Reuben and Gad. Let's kind of jump into it. So here we see in verse 1, the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, for he was the firstborn, but because he defiled his father's couch or bed, his birthright was given to the sons of Joseph and the son of Israel, so that he could not be enrolled as the oldest son. So we get the answer right here in verse 1, why Reuben was not mentioned first. Reuben is the firstborn of Jacob's sons. And so he should be listed first, right? Because that's just the way that it was done. But because of his sin, that right was given up, right? Was given to Joseph's sons. And so here you now find Reuben, though he is the firstborn, he is not listed first. Another thing I want to point out is in verse 10 that the Reubenites waged war against the Hagrites. The Hagrites. This will be an important part of history. The Hagrites are a nomadic people who lived in what we would call the Arab regions today. Okay, they were nomadic. They were tent dwellers. They had no city. They did anything. But what was most important about them is that they were cattle farmers. They had crazy amounts of cattle. And so the tribe of Reuben wages war. They defeat them. They take all their tents and all of their cattle. And so that will set a precedence kind of as we continue to read that Reubenites will be around a cattle people, okay? And that's where it comes from. We get the fourth tribe, and that is the tribe of Gad, starting in verse 11, right? So we've had Judah, Simeon, Reuben, and now we've had Gad. And it goes through this big list of people like everybody else. A couple things I want to point out is that when Gad was helping fight against the Haggites and some other not Arab, they weren't really Arabs yet, but nomadic type people in the Arab region. Notice it says in verse 20 that they cried out to God in the battle, and he granted the urgent plea because they trusted in him. So Gad was a group, was a tribe of Israel, and they were godly people, okay? They were godly people. And a lot of times people don't think of them as godly people because remember, Gad is one of the people who wanted to stay on the east side of the Jordan, right? They saw the hills of Gilead, and just how great it was. And they go to Moses and said, hey, we don't want to cross the Jordan. We love this area. Can we stay? And the Lord said, yes, you can stay if your if your soldiers will cross the Jordan with Israel, help them battle, take over the promised land, and then they can return back home. And that's exactly what they did. And so a lot of people kind of don't think that because they didn't want to cross, they were ungodly or untrusting. That's not the case at all. They were godly. Now, they should have gone into the promised land, but they were still good, godly people. And we even see here some proof that the Lord answered their prayer because they trusted in the Lord and he helped in a battle. Notice what they got in this battle: 50,000 camels, 250,000 sheep, 2,000 donkey, and 100,000 men alive. 100,000 slaves is what it goes to. For many fell because the war was of God and they lived their place until the exile. And so a part of war is death and is destruction and consequences. And so we can see that happening here with Gad. Now, starting in verse 23, we see the half tribe of Manasseh. Remember, Manasseh is broken into two regions. There's one on the eastern side of the Jordan and one on the western side of the Jordan. This one is the eastern side of the Jordan. So you have Gad, and then you have the eastern half tribe of Manasseh. So we're just kind of going from south to north, okay? On the east side of the Jordan. A couple things that I want to point out here is, much like we talked about Gad, they wanted to stay on the east side of the Jordan. They were good people. They were godly people. Notice in verse 24, it says that they were mighty warriors, famous men, heads of their fathers' houses. These weren't scared people. They didn't want to cross the Jordan because they were scared or because they didn't have faith in God. No, they saw land that was better than they've ever seen in their life. And they said, hey, can God give us this land? And God did give them that land. Though it wasn't the promised land, though they were the first to go into exile because they weren't in the promised land, they started off good, godly people. But then the very next verse, 25, but they broke faith with God of their fathers and whored after the gods of people of their land, right? Remember what God said when he's coming into the promised land. You go into the promised land and you run everybody out. You need to separate yourself. You don't need to be around the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites, all these people, right? Because why? Because they're idol worshipers. They worship everything, and that's going to creep in on you, Israel, and you're going to forsake me. So get rid of them all. Well, they did that, but on the eastern side of the Jordan River, it's not the promised land. They didn't do that. They didn't run everybody out. Or a lot of times they ran out, they just crossed the Jordan, and now all of these bad guys or these non-God believers would come into their region. And so because of that, they were some of the first to fall. So they started out good and godly, but were around bad company, around idol worshipers, and they were some of the first to fall and whore after other gods, or to leave Yahweh worship. And so that's exactly what happens here. And so we see they were there until Tiglath-Pileser, the king of Assyria, comes and takes them out. And he takes out basically the tribes on the eastern side of the Jordan first, goes up, goes around the Sea of Galilee, and then comes down and destroys the rest of Israel. And so that is chapter 5. So in the two chapters, 4 and 5, we've covered Judah, we've covered Simeon, Reuben, Gad, and the eastern side of Manasseh. So 2 chapters, we've covered 5 tribes. Hope that makes a little bit more sense, and we will see you tomorrow in chapter 6. God bless.